Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing live show number 429. I am your host, Loren Gray. Thank you so much for joining us both live on TV. If you're watching us on your Roku TV, Google TV, Amazon TV, Apple TV, Samsung TV, LG TV, basically any smart TV. Thank you. You get to see my smiley, happy face and still disheveled office background. My wife has reminded me repetitively that I need to improve my background. She was kind enough to put in my old sign that had used to be pinned on the wall. We'll make a better version of that. I keep saying that, but it is true. Christmas is coming. With that, thank you also for all us, everyone that's watching us on Facebook Live. We're on multiple pages in Facebook, a lot of association pages, business pages. Thank you for everyone that does support us in that regard by allowing us to broadcast on your Facebook pages. Also on YouTube channels. There are YouTube channels and other YouTube channels of other companies and other associations and other organizations. Thank you all for all that as well. On LinkedIn, however, I'm only on my own profile. That's all that LinkedIn allows is one broadcasting capability. And that is on the Loren Gray profile on LinkedIn, should you ever want to discover me on that. And what else are we on? X, yes, Twitter. We do Twitter and Twitch. I'm sorry, Twitch. If you use your media console for watching things, listening to things, then we're there as well. And as a reminder, we also have our audio podcast that we do after this show. It's shorter, audio only, obviously. Goes out to 39 countries, which is ironic because we also have, we translate to 11 languages. It also is on our radio station. If you're not familiar with our radio station, hospitalityradio.com is the website, but Hospitality Radio is the radio station. And we are on 26 different international platforms. We're in 109 countries, 112 countries, sorry. Our TV broadcast is actually in 209 countries. You can catch us there too. We do not only our podcast on Hospitality Podcast, or Hospitality Radio, but we do other podcasts of content. We have Revenue Management Hour, we have Sales Hour, so forth. So enough with the self-gratification. Let's get to the topic of today. The reason why I'm saying all of this is because of some emails that I've received. Thank you, Sally. You said I could use your first name. For telling me all the things that you appreciated about us covering our data usages and our funnel usages and the tools that we use. And you also follow our podcast, and we've got into some great detail about platforms that I persistently use for when we went through the budget process, but also on modeling for forecasting and so forth. As a matter of fact, the platform Giru reached out and I said, I don't take sponsorships, but you can certainly use the content as an endorsement if you would like. That way it keeps it nice and easy when it comes to me not feeling I have to be biased about my opinions. But today's conversation is inspired from the fact that there has to be a fulcrum adjust on some of the perceptions that I've been talking adamantly and ardently about when it comes to data usage. Yes, data usage, as I've often described it, is related to the opportunity of numbers and calculating the numbers for yieldabilities. How many people do you need to see what you're saying? How many of those people need to act on what you're saying? How many people of those that acted on what you're saying actually purchased what you're saying? That mathematical process, that funnel process, that workflow process, the ways we approach the creation of what we want to attach and target to, the persona targeting and so forth that we've done, is all very mathematical and incredibly valuable. And I'm not taking away from any of my soapbox standing efforts to educate everyone on the idea of usabilities. However, in some of the ways that some of the questions have been phrased back to me as feedback from the shows and appreciations and so forth, I realized that I might be creating a bit of a monster since it is going to be Halloween next week when I go to the Halloween theme. I've created a Frankenstein in some ways because if you focus only on that value proposition, if you focus only on the derivatives of the math with production, like, okay, I need to get this many people. How do I target those people? How do I institute that in custom audiences? How do I institute that in persona building? How do I create campaign variations to broadcast and communicate, and we'll use that word a lot today, to these audiences that I have defined? It all works really well, actually. But you can make it work a whole lot better. And the real value proposition of it is not so much just the use of numbers in the numbers sense, as it is what you're communicating. So a very long introduction plus self-promotion to our topic today. And our topic today is, what's love got to do with it? The true power of storytelling. Now, yes, if you have been a loyal fan, follower of the show, you might say, Loren, you did talk about storytelling about July-ish, and it's true. Prior to our very large, repetitive conversations about budget process, and starting in August, July, I did talk about the art of storytelling, the value of storytelling, and I'm still going to refer to it in that same context right now. That storytelling is an art, but I'm going to talk to it now in context as a balance to the fulcrum of the data and the usage of data that I had been pounding and browbeating on for these past few shows. The idea is this. Let me create some analogies since I'm famous for analogies. A razor blade cuts, but it can't cut down a tree. An axe can cut a tree, but can't cut a piece of paper. It doesn't mean that either are not good at what they do, but they're good at what they do particularly. Just using numbers will be successful, but it won't be successful in the full aspect of what you may need it for. And in reverse, having great content, great stories without a vehicle to get it in front of people where you have the mousetrap. You just got to let the world know you have the best one. And how does that function work? And that's where the numbers and the metrics and the targeting all come in. They live in symbiotic relationship. They can exist individually. People can discover your content and be enamored and loved and have incredible loyal followings and ardent influencers and advocates of your content and truly appreciate everything that you produce in that. But it's not going to be to the metrics that could be totally beneficial as if it was not combined with numbers and volume. By the same token, you could do all the things we talked about these past few shows about numbers and volume and workflows and mechanics and be successful at it, but not as successful as if you didn't add good content to it and even make it better, because then that discoverability has value. So when we talk about what's love got to do with it in the metaphor for Tina Turner, it's about remembering and connecting why we're doing this. Marketers often get portrayed in odd ways. Usually we are the ones that make things out of smoke. We describe things in ways that make people interested in the uninteresting. All of those have a double-edged sword of both a compliment and as an insult. I would say in our current world right now, we are awash. We are veritably flooded over. We are underwater with the use of adjectives. If we don't use incredible, dumbfounded, overwhelmed, words that used to be at a threshold that was really exceptional, like, oh my gosh, if I was overwhelmed, if I use, it's unbelievable, really. They used to be a high mark, but then as marketers getting to destroy anything we touch, we began to realize that by using those adjectives and adverbs, we could really try to hammer in how what we're saying is so much more important to listen to than what somebody else might say by not using the words. If you tell somebody, "Oh, that's good," I don't know. That doesn't sound like they really liked it. It has to be incredible, unbelievable. I was stunned. And now what happens is those words have become mundane. If you don't use them, then it's, like I said, lesser than what you had hoped them to be, because that's the new benchmark of what people are supposed to say. My product is supposed to be unbelievable. It's supposed to be one of a kind. It's supposed to have no peer to it. It's supposed to be so unique, it'll be a chance of a lifetime. Oh my gosh. I cringe. It's funny, we watch TV at home, and I'm terrible at spelling. My wife is wonderful at spelling, so she notices the misspells that newscasters put up. It's like, gosh, bless them. They're rushing their little butts off to put the little 1/3 lines on the bottom, and somebody misspells something. My wife is going to catch it. She is the ultimate proofreader. And I know there's a lot of people out there that probably are shaking their heads going, yep, me too. Can't stand it. Matter of fact, there's whole websites dedicated to the discovery of signs and things like this that are misspelled, or programmer and so forth. And we joke about those people as well. Well, for me, it's about marketing. I watch commercials to understand what they're trying to say, how they say it, and how they produce it. Is there something I can garner and learn from it? How they transition between images, how they refer to certain things, their pace and tempo of their messaging, whatever it is. That's my geekiness about marketing. And what I have found is we are trying to artificially create an emotion for things by the overusages of adjectives and adverbs, hoping that by using them, we are injecting them with the passion, the sense of urgency, the value of what we hope would drive a person to conversion. We really don't believe what we're saying. We know we have to say it in order to keep pace with everybody else that's saying it. So we're in this vicious circle of keeping up with the Joneses marketing-wise, but also losing our authenticity in the way that we communicate. And you've heard me say this over and over. Marketing is a communication. there's a proposition as to the value of it. We want to communicate in such a way as to effectively invoke change for whoever's listening or is exposed to what we're presenting. It has purpose. But so too is any communication. If you take the time to want to communicate with somebody, it's because you're trying to convey something that is with you to them. Where it breaks down is that we always talk about the adages that there's actually 3 stories that are being told. The one from your perspective, the one from the receiving perspective, and the actual story. Because how you're saying it is in the teller of the story is in the tale of the teller. Um, Whoever, the same thing. Victor comes us the spoils of being able to tell the story. Our history is peppered with the perspective of basically whoever won told the story of how they won. They didn't talk about maybe the good stuff that happened to the person that lost, or where they were wrong and the person that lost was right. That doesn't come through in history. We've become to, as we get better at discovering history, we've come very true to realize that there is more to our history than just what we were educated through from the victor. Same too with our marketing. Successful marketing is now the new benchmark for whoever else wants to replicate it. We're a series of cloners, in the sense that if we see somebody do something well, then we want to replicate it because it did well, so we want to do the same thing. The very reason why I watch other people's commercials and advertisements is because I want to learn from them and see if there's something that they're doing I'm not doing that I could do better, or do what they do, or learn from what they did wrong to know what I don't want to do. Whatever it is, I'm learning from somebody else. And we like replicating it. We see that in our industry all the time. As one brand does something, the other brand sees whether it's successful or not, and we'll go try to replicate it. I've often said many times on the show and on the podcast, there's always 3 questions in a C-level discussion when the product is being pitched. How much does it cost? How much do we project that we're going to make off of it? And the third one, which is the most annoying of them all, is who else is doing it? And that's usually under the litmus test of whether a company that is asking that is a leader of trend and change, or a follower of results and duplications. A lot of companies, conservatively, don't want to be the first to do something in case it fails and they were the one that had to pay the expense of the failure. They'd prefer to see some other company do it and then learn from it faster than their competitors to how to duplicate it. This is how we do business. So why are we bringing this all up about what has love got to do with it, the art of storytelling? Because we can math out, as we've done these past few shows, about the modality of getting content in front of people. We can, and have really talked through the many ways in which you can create the structure of the sourcing of your audiences, the sourcing of the actions of your audiences, the types of audiences that you're sourcing, and then identifying those particular characteristics in a format that is usable in the distribution platforms, the channels of communication of marketing that we have: paid campaigns, paid social, OTT advertisement, social media in general, website content, affiliate content, whatever it may be, and use it to get in front of the people on the channels that they use to discover our content on. People that find things on Facebook, and the way that they find them are different than people that find them on SERP pages, search engine result pages, and website results, as well as what Google does with their Google Zero by putting their answer boxes ahead of everybody else to try to usurp everything else by making Google the most valuable commodity of answering the questions that people are posing. That's why generative AI has had such an interest, because you begin to more humanly ask questions under the hopes that you will more humanly be told an answer. So putting the emotions to what we're doing for marketing by means of what we say is very critical. I would love to tell you that, sorry, coffee's very good, that I wish you would tone down your adjectives and adverb use, but it's going to make it look in contrast. Unless you want to be that different, where people begin to realize, thank goodness this person isn't talking about over the top, unbelievable, incredible, I was stunned, but rather good, and it's valuable and helpful, and words that have a lesser inclimeter of intent compared to the over-the-top adjectives that get used so often. But oftentimes you might find that difficult and challenging, because people then feel like, maybe, what are you not saying? Because you're not saying it like everybody else says it. So is it as good as you say it is, or is it unbelievable like it should be? So you run that risk. And this is out to your type of voice. And if you haven't talked to people about your type of voice that you use in marketing, you should. And if you're the one responsible for marketing, you should know what your voice is. Now, there's the technical components of first person possessive, third person impartial, authoritative, conversational, familiar, informational, corporate. There's tonalities, there's temperament, and there's perspective. Um, all of those things are great to understand the usages of it, but you really have to understand the simplest aspect of it. Who do I envision is representing our company as an entity? If I was to create an avatar of a representation of our company, how would they say what they say? Would it be from a familiar perspective, from an authoritative perspective, from an educational perspective, an inspired perspective, a humorous perspective, an intimate perspective? These are all ways of defining voice, but you need to define yours. You need to know that if you're creating advertisement that is informational, then the voice has to be related as an informational source, that you are coming from a position of knowledge to a position of information. If you are coming from a friendly perspective, personalized voice, intimate voice, then it's one of, hey, blah, 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 blah. You're a little bit softer in your word usage, a little sloppier in grammatical punctualities. You're a little bit more conversational. These are ways that humanize the message. And it changes the scope. I say this from an interesting perspective. They got this whole idea going from what Sally had asked about, was the creation of AI voices. They're very helpful. Right now, I am trying to build what's called a chorus station ID jingle for our radio station, which is a group of people, back when the radio used to be much more prominent in our lives than it is now, where you had that top of the hour ID, you're listening to da 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 da, and you had this, radio kind of thing where you had like a lot of voices singing it. Well, that's very expensive to go pay and hire to do. When, especially now in the world of technology, you can actually create it. It's time consuming, but you can create it. And so playing with the AI voices, you type, there's lots of platforms out there, by the way. And we'll talk about a few of them actually on the podcast today, just out of familiarization of how you can change tone of voice. Anyways, you can type what you want it to say, and you can say, I want male or female gender. I want it of this ethnicity. So it has the tonality of that ethnicity, whether it be Spanish, French, whatever. There's always that lilting sound of someone that is, but that has that type of accent associated with that language. And then when you type it, and they'll read it for you, and it sounds very flat and robotic initially. And that's what we were used to hearing, because people are so quick to try to make this stuff. They don't realize all the things that they need to do to make it sound better. So you have to go in and you have, first off, you have the change in pitch. You have the change in pace. You have the way that you type the words. If you type them phonically compared to literally, the words get said differently. You have pause and meter, as to the metering of the staccato of the pace of the enunciations of the words. We always talk about, Southern drawl, where words are drawn longer compared to perhaps the Northeast in the New York environment, where it's a little bit of a high-end lilt to it. All I'm saying is there's a lot of nuance to voice physically. So you can imagine the nuance of voice message-wise when you don't get to add all of that audible aspect to it. Now, radio ads, by the way, are great. The ability to target on digital radio now is profoundly fantastic, both demographically and geographically. And you have a greater opportunity of resources. You find that a lot of people are oversaturated with social media and or can't engage with social media, so they tend to lean into audio ads, audio listening, Spotify's, iHeartRadios, and so forth. Whether they even listen to the local radio station, it's still digitized. It's easier to get out your phone is a better digital radio than it is a real radio with a FM antenna or AM antenna and looking for reception. So for that's the new way to get in front of people in lots and lots of ways. I've been very successful with that in many ways. So anyways, digressing off on a tangent, the idea of voice and personalization and the nuance of it, like I said, came from using these AI voices that I'm trying to create for this radio jingle, where I'm adding all these different variant voices saying the same thing and then creating it together into what's called a bus line, the track for all the voices to be together. And then I use it in the parts that I need to create the jingle. I'll have a sample of it on the podcast, not this podcast, probably next one, because it takes time, as I said. And in with any of these kind of creations, video or audio, it's never completely the way you envision it. And so you tweak with and tweak until you realize it's good enough for what you need it for, and it'll never be what you originally conceived, because it just would take too much time and probably never get right anyway. Anyways, the emotion of your voice is what I'm trying to get to. The ability to convey more of the message than just the words themselves. And that's where the love has to do with it part comes in our little cute tongue-in-cheek topic discussion, is the emotional value of what you're talking about. We have that as an absolute blessing of our industry. What we have is what everybody wants to do. Travel is in anybody's mind as a valuable thing that they like to do, want to do more of, want to explore, want to try. Even those people that are afraid of travel still want to experience it in some capacity, in some level, whether it's just leaving the county they live in or the country they were born in. People want to understand other places. It's that internal wanderlust aspect, and that's our asset. Everything that we do is tailored to the people wanting to do that. Now, you would say, oh, corporate travel. Well, there's a have to, but there's still a need of want. Anybody that's done the road warrior world, you're in the groove. You can complain about it when you're doing it, but you often miss it when you stop. Now, eventually that fades away. You get to the mindset when you get older of got the t-shirt, don't need to do it again. Back in the day, that's what you had to do. Nowadays, it has to be a damn good reason to fly across the country to do whatever it is that's being asked of you. So everybody travel wise, we have that as an asset. We have that as an emotional connection. If you're just pumping rates and dates, if you've taken all that data strategy we've talked about these past few shows, and you put it into campaigns, and you've isolated targeting, and you've come up with the content that's related to the specific targeting that you've identified, and that this is the things that are related to what these people, based on their targeting, want to hear about, but don't humanize it, you're missing out on some of the strongest benefits associated with it. Yes, some aspects of our marketing are literally exposure of rates and dates in our commodity of product. That's flat out what it is. Metasearch is very relatable to that. Metasearch is one of those ones. Make sure you're in front of the people when they're looking for if you're available and what you're asking in the sense of rates, and if you have availability of inventory. It's a very functional relationship. Other channels, much more broader in the ability to invoke emotion. Social being one of the biggest and the strongest. It's second only to your really biggest direct asset, and that is your content on the sites that you can control the most, your websites. Your website should always be your point of truth on all content related to things. You should have your landing pages on your ads there. You should have the content that the ads and or your programs of organic, social or whatever, and shareabilities come to, so that you have more authenticity to what you're talking about. And all of that content should be rich of the perspective of the voice of your company and to the ear of the listener. If you're talking about family events, then speak to it from a parental perspective of your voice to parents that would be listening. And the more specific you can get about it based on the age categories of their children and or their special need requirements, which are things that often get ignored in so many different perspectives of marketing and communication. I think Myrtle Beach has done a great job with theirs on the autism scale program. They had a great media program about how they're trying to find and creating ways that families with autism that have, from coming into a noisy airport, how can that not happen? How can they find another way to bring children in that can not deal with that kind of stimulus in a safe way, or have restaurants that collaborate that allow for them to operate in an environment that is the most conducive for the special needs requirements of those things. Those kind of examples and things that you can perceive of your own product as to whether there's a way that you can help with that are all emotional connections. Yes, it's business. Yes, but obviously these people are going to spend to have to take advantage of what you're offering. You're not giving it away per se, but you are trying to show that you recognize it and value it to create whatever you can do to help with it. Just don't act unauthentic and act like you're doing it, but you're not really doing it just simply to get in front of them as a target audience. That falsehood, that lack of truth it backfire very, very badly. The emotional aspect, the tie together of the stories, you can say that you have rates and dates for a particular event in your destination, or you can really augment all the specialness of the event and tie and weave into that story why your proximity to it, your people that are there that appreciate the event, the people that stay with you that would be peers and comrades in arms, so to speak, of attending the event, the unique things that happen at your hotel or resort during the event, the relationships you had for ancillary services like taxis and shuttles and or food courts or whatever it is, whatever the value propositions, weave it as a story to the audience you're talking to. And that's one of the other very clear functions that you need to produce. Don't generalize your content. Identify the uniqueness of the ways to share your content with the particular targets that the particular audiences that you're targeting. I say that with a tongue-in-cheek mentality to it because in some ways you have to start general to understand what people's interest and engagement is. We often do our best guess and we do our best research and we really think we've nailed down exactly what we need to say to whom we think we need to say it to. And we realize that we're talking to these little people over here and we're missing all these people over here because we were too specific. We were right, but we weren't to scale. Sometimes you need to just throw general information out, see how it's engaged with, and then identify from that engagement what would be the most valuable targeting, niching of the data that the content that you're using to better speak to those particular niches. It's kind of an old school way of doing marketing, and I've said this about social media a lot. Social media, as in general, is a fast moving, mile deep river in front of you. You need to take a teaspoon of water out of it, a cup out of a bucket out of it, or redivert it into a whole new river for yourself. But if you were to go into a stadium, 100,000 people, and they're all talking, it's the sound you recognize on TV and so forth, that sound. You can't hear any one conversation, even a cluster of conversations. There could be a whole group of people trying to chant something. You really can't hear it. It kind of sounds like something, but you don't know what's being done until you start getting closer to a group of people. And then the noises and the sounds turn into voices and conversations. And you listen to them. And it might be not anything that you can relate to. So you don't engage. And you go to another audience and do the same thing. And eventually you find an area of people that are talking about things that are relatable to you that you might be able to contribute to. Our marketing, tone deaf as it is, the first thing that we would do is, hey, I'm such and such with XYZ Hotel, and I have rates of 129, and I have rooms available for what you guys are talking about. You've not validated your relationship with anybody. You've not introduced yourself outside of the pitch. You've not endeared yourself by listening to what they're talking about to know whether even what you would say would be interesting. You've simply stepped in because it was close enough to what you needed. That's how a lot of agencies market. They do bland, dumb, dull, blunted stuff. Brand, destination, competitive set. Let's do it. And then hammer the bejeebers out of them for retargeting should anyone dare touch their ads. That's usually what happens. And they pump out generic content. And as we've warned with AI, generic AI generated content that only makes people disappointed with you because you're the one pumping it out. Remember, their reputation isn't the one that's attached to it. Yours is the one that fails because they used your name in it. So going back to the analogy of the crowd, the best thing to do, like anything, is to listen. See what's being talked about. Who's the one talking? Why are they saying what they're saying? And then making the assessment of whether you can contribute to it or not. Sometimes your contribution to it is an acknowledgement and appreciation that they shared, and you move on. That leaves behind a wake of positiveness about your company. You didn't try to sell them something. You appreciated the fact that they were talking about what they were talking about, but you had nothing really to contribute. People respect that. We're so used to pointing out the trolls and the bad people on social. There's a whole audience of us that just go and say, that was pretty cool. I mean, it's a business in my area. He didn't try to pitch us anything. He appreciates the fact we're having the conversation we did and hope the best for us. Kind of want to know what that guy's doing or what that hotel's doing, whatever. Anyway, eventually you'll find a group that you can interact with, that what you can contribute would be of interest to them. And you don't dominate it, you offer it. And see how those words are different, but they mean completely different things. You don't pound what you are selling initially. You listen to what they're talking about and offer if what you have to contribute is received or something somebody wants. Take for example, you're listening to a social conversation about an event, and people are talking about the things to do and where to goes and so forth, and you feel like you can contribute saying, oh, that restaurant is awesome. Our guests from our hotel go over there all the time, and they come back ranting and raving about it. I believe the chef's name is John, and he makes an awesome X or whatever. Highly recommend them. Wow. And you didn't follow it up with, by the way, when you stay with us, we can get you over there to nothing. You just said, hey, you were right. I can vouch for that. And then you leave it at that. And then you allow people to ask you more stuff. Really? Oh, what hotel are you again? And it goes from there. That engagement type, that storytelling type is prevalent in our relationship and in our world when it comes to relationship building all the time. When you went to the bars where you were single, you didn't bad analogy, but anyway, you engaged and you tested the waters to see what people were, people were interesting and if they were interesting to them, and you allowed the conversation to be a Q&A. You just didn't dominate, and you just kept asking questions. Well, how many brothers and sisters do you have? Do you live right around here? It gets creepy. Like, dude, back off. Instead, let the dialogue go two-way, conversational back and forth. Let them engage at the levels they want to engage in. Ask the questions that they want answers to, without you dominating it with an oversaturation of answers that they didn't ask for. That's the storytelling. That's the emotional connection to it, because the emotional connection isn't just about, up to this point, all we've talked about is the semantics of our conversation, the tonalities, the voice, the methodologies. It's what you're talking about. Storytelling, in its most simplest form, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Why you're telling the story, what happens in relationship to the story, and how the story concludes. The conclusion for us as marketers, as communicators, is the hopeful engagement and conversion of that person to actually acquire whatever it is that we think that they can acquire from us, whether it's a room, whether it's a meal, whatever it is. The inception point is our ability to introduce ourselves to them. The middle point is giving them the information that they need to get to the end, which is hopefully a transition of conversion for us. We're not missing the point of our communication and marketing. We're just simply humanizing it to the value that is of the user wanting it. Storytelling for what we have as content. Again, we have the magical keys to the kingdom. We are about hospitality. We're about travel. We're about food. We're about all the fun stuff people work for, that do their lives so that they can do the things we have to offer. Stay at the places that we have built. Eat at the places that we've cooked at. Enjoy the golfing that we've done, or the pickleballing we've done, or whatever it is that we offer, in the spas that we've done, or the destinations we're in, and the things that they can experience because they are putting us as a part of their experience in their world. Like I've often said, the hotel they pick, the resort they pick, is the anchor to their stories. And that is so true when it comes to stories. People have two stories on their travels: what actually happened and the story they tell. And what actually happened gets dulled and blunted according to the story's perspective of what they tell. Is it a horror story, or is it a happy ending story? Not in that way, but is it a happy story? If you have enough bad circumstances happen, the story turns from a positive to a negative. And then other things that may not have been necessarily as bad get thrown into the pile for emphasis. That's what we always try to avoid. We want to be on the good side of the stories. We want to contribute to the stories that they share. And gosh knows that's the world of social we're dealing with. That's the influencers, the affiliates, the advocates of what goes on, is those people that want to share their experiences in the hopes that their friends want to enjoy the same stuff, since they're their friends. And two is to show people that they're enjoying what they're doing. We often talk about the Facebook life. Is that really what people are doing in their life, or is it just what they're sharing, and meanwhile their life is miserable? The idea of storytelling is that's what we give other people to do. The virility, the ability for it to be viral, is how well people resonate with it. People share content to make themselves good. You look a certain way to the people that follow them for the reasons that they follow them, whether it's family, friends, coworkers, whatever. And so they share them with them to keep this avatar of their persona up with them. And those people may be thinking that it would reflect well on them if they were to share with their people that follow them. And that creates that viral sharing. Like, hey, this was, they want to be the one that got to share to their people before somebody else shared it to that person, kind of thing. And that's what creates viral content. It's what creates story. Viral content is storytelling, amped. I tell a story, it gets shared around the world. That kind of storytelling is what we want to do in marketing. Storytelling is about attaching the emotional aspect of what we're talking about to the message we want to convey, to the audience that's most receptive to listening to it, in the hopes that they are engaged enough to want to acquire what it is that we are providing as a value as services and products. That is, in its nascent level, our relationship and our value proposition as marketers. That purpose of storytelling, that emotional connection to how of what we're talking about to how we're telling them, is the magic that we have to weave. Yes, it's the funnels and the workflows. Yes, it's the modalities and the metrics and the conversions and the targetings and all of this stuff that we've been talking about these past few weeks. That's what makes it bigger and better. But it's not the core of what it is that it's for. What we do is stories. The content we do is stories, and how we tell them, and in the voice that we tell them, on the channels that we put them on, to the audiences that listen and engage with them and respond, and then from that response enact in action with us, is the process that we have to look at its entirety. That is our storytelling. That is what's love got to do with it. Okay. The true power of storytelling. When you take all of those metrics that we've talked about these past few shows and apply the realism of emotion and the story and the value of the content that we're putting together, that's when the magic of the success of the marketing and the funnels and the numbers all amplify to a level far beyond what they would have provided by themselves. And by putting the two together, far exceed what good content and storytelling would have done in a bubble that nobody knew existed. Putting that together is what creates the magic content value of all of that effort together. So I don't want to beat the whole subject down. I certainly don't want to just draw it out to say that we do our hour show. I wanted to make sure that we hit the point of why storytelling is so critical, what the emotion value of the storytelling is, and hopefully I was able to convey that. Didn't go off on too many tangents. If you want to watch any repeats of our shows, I guess a couple of places I haven't mentioned, other than we talked about the radio station, we talked about a podcast, we talked about our live TV station, hospitality marketing hospitality channel, I should say, which you can find on all of your smart TV platforms. The live show is always on the free side of that. There is paid content behind it. It's kind of like Netflix. You pay $5 a month, and there's content behind about it just for the industry. We're not here to be consumer side. This is about the industry. You want to learn about hotels. You want to learn about restaurants. You want to learn about tools and processes and softwares and services and hardware and all that stuff. We have all that kind of content behind the paywall for the TV station. We have a website that is our I Love Lucy rerun platform, basically is why I could nicknamed it as, and that's hospitalitychannel.tv. All of the live shows are there, indexable by data broadcast, content, and or guest hosts. Also, all of our podcasts, even though they're audio, we make little videos for them that just basically are gaps for you to be listening to. They play in constant sequences. All the new shows get added into it and indexed as the process goes on. If you want to see our TV channel from a website, you can go to talktravel.tv. If you want to see it as an app, it's in Apple iOS in the Apple Store and also in Google Play Store for Android. Just look for the Hospitality Channel app, and that will bring you to our TV station app where the content is at. If you are a hospitality marketing professional and would like a peer group in which you can engage with, we're not there to teach from zero any marketing. You have to already be doing the industry. As a matter of fact, if you go to hospitalitymarketing.club, put your email in, I send you a quiz. Pass the quiz at 90%. There's 10 questions, so you get 9 of them right. That means you are fluent enough in the conversation of hospitality marketing to join the peer group. At that point, you join the conversation. We have live Q&As. We have live presentations from people in the group about modalities, fixing how to create campaigns, how successful is this, how do you fix this, what is this issue in code? And then there's tiers within that. You have people that are at a certain level that's all they want to talk about. There's certain people that only want to talk about certain things. And there's people who really want to get into some hard, grindy core coding stuff. GA4 and BigQuery data and data sets and Python and all the other stuff. Anyways, they're all out there. You can join us at hospitalitymarketing.club, and I'll send you the quiz for that. I think I have self-promoted just about everything that we're doing. Again, the radio station, hospitalityradio.com. Our podcast is on 39 platforms. You can find us, look for Hospitality Marketing, the podcast. And of course, our live show, we will recast this show in different time zones. 11:30 a.m. Wednesdays. It's Sydney, Australian time for our APAC friends, even though we have several people that watch us live in the APAC region. Thank you so much for that at bizarre hours, but thank you. We do also a recast at 11:30 a.m. London, UK time for our EU and Mideast friends, for them to catch the show at a more reasonable time during their time zones. And I thank you for all the feedback, Sally included. Thank you. She actually reached out to me on a platform that we use for audio feedback, which is hdm.news/talkback. Every week we put a audio question out that you can audio reply to, and then you tell us the permission that we can use your response at, whether it's not refer to you by name, or actually play your question or your answer to us. And there's always opportunity for you to audibly give us feedback on all of our platforms, all the podcast platforms, the live show platforms. Every place has a feedback. You can actually reach me directly at Loren at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. I answer each and every email related to both the podcast, the live shows, the radio stations, all of that stuff. And I get some great feedback on the content, what content you'd like to see and hear. And of course, if you're part of our Hospitality Marketers Club, I get feedback from there all the time as well as to what we should present in this format. So any comments or suggestions are well and welcome. And of course, you catch us on any of these platforms, please rate us if you like us, especially, and leave comment. That helps others discover our content as well. So with all that self-promotion, my name is Loren Gray. I thank you for the privilege of your time. An early happy Halloween to everybody. And I look forward to talking to you all next week.